All right, I'm joined by a man whose clips have probably been sent to me by more A's fans than anybody else. David P. Samson, former president of the Marlins, host of Nothing Personal. Thank you so much for joining me. I know a lot of people are excited to see us have a conversation, David.
I'm looking forward to it. You have certainly been at the forefront of this entire A's situation, and you have built quite a fan base. It's a complicated deal, and hopefully we can shed some light for your audience and try to figure out what in the heck's actually going on here.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We could actually start there. What in the heck is going on here? Now, I know you've been outspoken. You said you'll probably be one of the last holdouts in somebody that believes that the A's will actually end up in Las Vegas. As a former baseball executive, what leads you to that specific conclusion at this time?
Well, it seems to me that when you operate under the same playbook that I operated under and you take the same steps that have been taken by the A's, that's the exact steps that I took starting in 2002 when I got to Miami. And frankly, I did some of the same things when I was in Montreal. One of them worked, one of them didn't work. And I understand what John Fisher's doing. I don't know that I agree in the way in which he's doing it, but I do know at the end of the day, relocating a team is not easy at all. And all of the stops and starts that you've seen, and I feel for the fan base of the A's because you live it and it's a roller coaster. And 1 minute you think the team's gone, then you think there may be a kernel of a possible hope, and the up and down can be difficult. But when you're in it, you don't really view it that way, actually, because it's all part of the process.
Yeah, and throughout this process, A's fans, they're used to being kicked when they're down. Obviously, the ownership hasn't treated them well. The investment in the team really hasn't been there. But when someone is willing to speak up for them, someone's willing to say things instead of just piling on like you've been doing. You've been speaking up for the A's fans, and I'm sure you've noticed a reciprocation. So, I mean, how do you see this process, where it's at currently, the lack of investment, and exactly how they can find a way to save this team in Oakland?
Well, let's start with the last one first, because I do want to talk about the perceived lack of investment. I'm sensitive to that. You know what?
Yeah,
I changed my mind. Let's start there.
let's start
Because
there.
that is one of the things that really has always eaten at me in my 18 years running a baseball team. It is the strangest job when you're the president of a team because everybody thinks they can do your job better than you can. And everybody is looking at everything you say, everything you do. And the bizarre part to me is that in sports, there's a winner and a loser 162 times a year. Very binary. Either you win a game or lose a game. There's no ties. You have to be either a winner or a loser. But when it comes to a stadium deal, it's not that easy. And when it comes to running a team, it's not that easy. So let's just look at John Fisher. And I am not going to sit here and defend John Fisher. I'm not that guy. I am not a spokesperson for ownership, contrary to what people think, for the commissioner, contrary to what people think. I'm not anti-player, contrary to what people think. But I'm here to tell you what's real. And what's real is that John Fisher looks at the revenue in Oakland. He looks at the makeup of his team. And he makes a decision whether you are a billionaire, a millionaire, or you're in debt up to your ears, ready to go bankrupt like Tom Hicks. You look at your individual business and you say, how many checks am I willing to write? Not that my team's worth $1 billion or $2 billion. How many checks am I willing to write today? And the Oakland A's, and you know this, even though fans may forget, they have been a winning organization. They are a front office and an organization on the field that I wish I could have been. The ultimate for me, Casey, is the Tampa Bay Rays because they win with the low payroll consistently. Oakland is second best because they know when their window's open and they know when their window's closed. I was terrible at that. We would be buyers at the deadline when we should be sellers. We'd be sellers when we should hang on and be buyers. But Casey, it's harder than you think to keep a window open. And what you're seeing this year on the field, it's not John punishing the Oakland A's fans. It's him knowing that the window that was open through the pandemic is now closed, but it will open again, I promise.
Timing wise, though, you're going into what is supposed to be the most important deal in the franchise's history, and you go into it with the lowest payroll in baseball and the worst record in baseball. So, I mean, does that make it harder for them? I know they just closed this public-private partnership deal in Vegas, but it made it a much tougher sell than it needed to be, though, didn't it?
I think what made it a tougher sell is how bad they did at selling it. And
Yes.
I'd like to think that I went scorched earth after the Marlins public-private deal, but the truth is there have been a ton of public financings since then, and there'll be a ton of public financings after this. Once the Oakland Stadium deal is taken care of, then you're on to Tampa, then you're going to be on to Arizona and Milwaukee. There'll always be a stadium situation. We called it an owners meeting. Who's up next? And when it's your turn, and right now it's Oakland's turn. So let's turn to the fact that there's zero correlation between their current record and whether they'll get a deal done in Oakland or Vegas. Not relevant. Interestingly, that if you know you're opening a building in 2028, you're trying to build, and we tried to do this up to 2012. We had a good team in 09, decent in 10, and we wanted to build payroll so in the first year of the new stadium, we'd be a winning team. You don't want the A's to be peaking now. You want them to be starting the climb back into their open window. So inside baseball, people do not view what they're doing on the field as bad. Off the field, PR, it is viewed what they're doing as bad, and I've certainly talked about it on Nothing Personal, and that gets us right into the conversation of the stadium deal and whether or not the A's fans have any hope, or is it a done deal?
Yeah, let's jump right into that. I mean, what did you think of the way they comported themselves during the public hearings? You saw the renderings. I mean, cartoonish AI quality at best. The pitch, I mean, Cavill stepped up. He's the team president. You were a former team president. Obviously, you could speak to this, but stepping up there and answering zero questions, just blatantly dodging them. How did you feel they comported themselves throughout that whole process?
I had a different approach. Our owner did not go to one meeting with the state or the county or the city, did not appear, did not speak publicly. So the fact that John Fisher's been silent is really not interesting to me. It's pretty normal. The team president is the one who should be out front. And when you're out front, you have to know that you are going to be a meat shield for the owner. You're going to take a lot of crap from a lot of different people and from the legislators, from the public. But when you're answering questions in a hearing, you've got to be able to bridge their questions into answers that they can take back to their constituencies as a victory. So if you're going to give more in community benefits, as an example, you give it behind closed doors, and you then let the public official come out and say, look what I did. Vote me back into office because I got more out of them than they were willing to give. When the truth is the A's were willing to give that the whole time. So I thought their strategy to get the bill passed in Nevada was fine. I do think that what Dave did when they were public and the statements they made, I thought that they were not well timed, and I thought they were not well thought out. The lack of empathy toward Oakland A's fans, the sort of matter-of-fact way in which it was announced, I think that you have to be smarter about what you're doing, especially if they think they are moving to Vegas. Is that what you want people in Vegas to think you are? That you're that sort of hardened person where you don't give a crap about your fans, you're just here about the deal? That may be true, but you want to fake
it. And speaking of faking it, we can get to the comments the commissioner made. They were a little bit suspect. I know you dove deep into them on your show, and I was blasting them all over social media, but I want to go back to the renderings real quick. I mean, you pointed out in the Marlins Park renderings that the trees were like 20 stories high. What did you think of the renderings of Las Vegas? Is it realistic? Can you even do a retractable roof stadium on 9 acres? And how are they going to pull any of that off?
First of all, I cannot believe that they released those renderings. I really cannot believe it because they're not realistic in any way, shape, or form. And the purpose of a rendering is to get people behind a concept. But if you're not ready with a rendering, it's better to do nothing. The reason why we did 20-story trees is what we were trying to show is that Marlins Park would not look strange in Little Havana where it's all 3-story buildings, that it wouldn't look like an eyesore, that it would somehow fit in with the neighborhood. It was pure showmanship, just so people in the public could have cover. The politicians wanted cover. The problem with the A's renderings is they didn't provide cover, they provided more questions.
Yeah.
So there is no retractable roof facility in baseball on 9 acres. Let's start with that. Even though they're looking at 30,000 seats, smallest in baseball, which, by the way, you can't say you're going to draw 2.5 million people to a 30,000 seat stadium. That math doesn't add up. They're not going to sell out every game. Nobody sells out every game. It's silly to even think that way. But then when I speak to architects, even architects who design buildings, could a retractable roof go on 9 acres? Maybe, but it would be very costly because it would have to be like a convertible car. You know how a convertible car, the roof sort of folds into itself, so it doesn't take up any more acreage. It doesn't ever go outside the car. It just sort of folds up and then down inside the back seat of the car. I don't know if I described that well, but that's
No, you described it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So could there be a roof that's designed that way? Yeah. Is it really costly? Yes. Is it going to be approved by baseball? Maybe. Are there air rights that Bally's will give them outside of the 9 acres to put columns so you can retract the roof outside of the building? No one's talking about that, but who's going to be at a Las Vegas stadium during the summer before a game if you don't have any cover? And the purpose of a retractable roof is that you open it so A, the grass can get some sun, but it provides shade where you can have fan engagement. And then you close the roof and then air condition the bowl when it's time to play the game. But if you don't have the extra acres, you can't do that. So all of it is interesting to me if they're counting on it being a destination area, if they're counting on people being engaged with the area. But then I was thinking, Casey, the A's in Vegas, that deal, it's only for the ballpark. All of the other building around the ballpark, the development is not owned or controlled by the A's. So the people who would not want a convertible-like roof would be Bally's, because who's going to want to be around there? If you've been to Vegas during the summer, no one is hanging out outside unless they're by the pool. So I just call into question the whole renderings. I don't think it helped them, and I don't think it's realistic.
Well, you mentioned air rights too. I mean, there's an airport runway right next to there, so there's some other things they would have to negotiate. It's an interesting situation. Let's go to Manfred's comments. I know you've weighed in extensively on these, but the other day he came out. He said the reverse boycott A's fans held was a average crowd on a regular night, and he opened himself up to a lot of criticism by making what I think a lot of people believe, myself included, were misleading statements about the situation in Oakland and where the deal stands. So I know you have a lot of people high up in Major League Baseball, and I'm sure you hear from them when you say things about these comments. But I mean, what in the world is he thinking, and why is he not portraying the Oakland side of this negotiation anywhere close to realistically?
It's a good thing my show is successful, because otherwise it wouldn't be a good show, because I'd be worried about getting back into baseball. Thank you so much. But you need to speak the truth, and that's what Nothing Personal is. And I love Rob. I respect Rob, and I was there when he got elected and helped him get elected, and I think that he has done well by the owners, which is his job. The team values are going up, and revenue's going up as an industry. Their central revenue, their marketing, their sponsorships, the rule changes. There's a lot of good. What's not great is what he does in public. And what I've spoken about is when you are trying to get a deal done for your team and for your owner, if in fact they do want the team to move to Las Vegas, which they don't, but if they did, there's no harm in being empathetic to A's fans, because you want the A's fans to still be baseball fans, although people in Brooklyn would argue they don't like the Dodgers still to this day. But that said, you don't want to ever burn bridges with your customers. It makes no sense. So there was no reason for Rob to say that comment, none at all. It didn't further the deal. It didn't make Vegas want to give more money or make a deal happen faster, easier. It did nothing but hurt. That's what bothered me about those statements.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at an eventual team in Las Vegas, you're counting on people traveling to that stadium because it's a small media market. So turning off the entire fan base of the team you're trying to move there seems like a horrible decision if you're the commissioner of baseball. I agree fully with that.
Especially when they presented a slide that they're expecting 5,000 fans a game who are coming to Vegas as tourists just for games, which is completely unrealistic, absolutely never going to happen. It would be the equivalent of me in the Marlins projections when we submitted to baseball our projections for Marlins Park, which didn't come true. And so remember, baseball has in its mind a new stadium that was done in Miami that has been a failure in terms of local revenue. Now, there hasn't been a winning team until this year, but we can't judge Marlins attendance because the way it works in baseball is that when you win this year, you expect more attendance next year. You can sell the winning season and get a higher season ticket base. But this year, they got 12,000 people yesterday for the Marlins. I don't know when you're going to air this, but whatever day it was for a first game with Arias getting hit after hit after hit, they drew 12,000 people, and everyone's excited about it because when you have a low season ticket base, you can't draw 30,000 to a game. It just doesn't work that way with individual and group sales. You're never going to get there. So for me, I didn't even tell baseball that we'd get 5,000 tourists coming to Miami in the middle of July just to go to Marlins Park. It's so absurd, and I know deep down Rob knows that's not true. John Fisher knows that's not true. So I totally ignored that slide.
Funny aside, the only time I've ever been to Marlins Park was when they held Super Bowl Media Day there. I was covering the 49ers. That was my only time I've been at Marlins Park, but it's a cool park.
Thank you. I mean, Jeter totally ruined it, but it was his team to ruin until he got fired. But it's you need a roof. You can't go for Las Vegas, it's got to be fully climatized with a roof. Period. Baseball will not approve an open air stadium. They won't approve a half roof or a shade roof. It's got to be climatized because you know very well what the weather's like in Las Vegas. But I want to make sure that we don't get too off the subject of the fact that the deal's not done in Vegas.
Yeah.
Just because the bill passed, so many people in the media, and you were not guilty of this, but so many people, when the bill passed, it was HB1 or whatever they called it. Was it HB1?
SB1.
SB1. Oh,
a special bill.
Special bill 1. That would make sense. I can't believe we tried to get a special session in Tallahassee for years. They would never do it. But when that bill passed, that was one step. There still has to be the private financing that John Fisher has to cement and submit to baseball and have them approve it. Then he's got to come up with all his financial projections. Really, how many fans are there going to be? What the sponsorship expectations are for sponsorship revenue. TV, we haven't even touched on the TV situation where the Vegas market is tiny compared to Oakland, and the entire formula for TV revenue has been blown up. So everyone's trying to figure out how to monetize TV again. So the owners look at this and say, wait a minute, we're paying X dollars of revenue sharing to Oakland. We're going to have to pay the same or more to Vegas. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't think that, and you can tell me more about this, obviously, but I don't see what is in it for the other owners. You're losing an expansion fee. You're waiving a relocation fee. You have the Dodgers, the Padres, the Angels, heck, the Diamondbacks, the Rockies who take part in that market as well. I don't think any of these teams are going to be happy with the Giants having all of Northern California to themselves. I think that's unfair for the SoCal teams. I think their TV chunks get taken away a little bit. So what is in it for the owners to pass a waived relocation fee and even approve this relocation at all?
So their view is that there's another candidate on the West Coast for expansion, and they believe that they will get the same expansion fee, whether it's Vegas or Vancouver or another city in the West Coast. And my view of it is I want as many competitors as possible. So baseball really needed SB1 to pass because I've not read the bill. And tell me, Casey, did it anywhere say that if it's not the A's, then the funding disappears?
The bill was for Major League Baseball.
Exactly.
Not the A's.
So you can understand why baseball wanted that to pass so badly, because there's now a funding structure in place should they go the expansion route. And that to me is fascinating. And they also know in Vegas, because it came out this week, there's more development going on in the hopes of attracting an NBA team. Mm-hmm. So when you look at Vegas, do you view Vegas as a 4-team market? Well, I know they viewed Miami that way. They don't view it that way anymore. I promise you that. Between the Heat, the Panthers, the Dolphins, and the Marlins, there's not enough sponsorship money. There's not enough gate revenue. Baseball gets the short end of the revenue stick, even above hockey, and they're both still short on the revenue side. Vegas
Yeah.
is not a four-sports city. It's just not.
Yeah, and I know that baseball might want to jump in, and this is funny, on the gambling, the sports betting angle as well. But to me, I think of all the sports, baseball has the weakest foothold in the sports gambling industry. It's just not the type of sport for that. And they've
Well,
also
the numbers are there.
historically been against it.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are there, which is people, obviously, NFL's number one. I would assume NBA 2,
Yep.
and MLB 3, hockey 4. If I had to guess, maybe hockey 3, baseball 4. But baseball does have the summer to itself. I also wonder whether the sports books in Vegas would take A's games, Las Vegas A's games, off the board. So we haven't heard anybody talk about the gambling angle or what the revenue is. We have not heard the other casinos weigh in. You can't build a ballpark in Vegas without the approval, and I don't mean official approval, say the blessing of the other casino companies. You need their help, because if they're fighting you, they'll make sure that nobody's buying anything there, because people are more beholden to the casino gaming companies than they would be to a baseball team. So all of the different pieces that you need to relocate, they're like in the second inning, and that's it. So my hope, and I've said this and I'll say it again, and hopefully someone's listening. Well, I know you have a big audience, but someone in baseball and in the mayor's office, pick up the phone, break the ice, make a phone call, have just a lunch. Have something to see if there's a kernel of a possibility of rehabilitating the Howard Terminal deal, which, by the way, is a more interesting deal for other owners because it gives A's a chance at more revenue. And it's better for the A's ownership because it gives them a chance for non-baseball related revenue by development around Howard Terminal. So many positives. And it accomplishes what Rob has said, the commissioner of baseball, for the last 8 years, and what baseball has been saying for 20 years. Baseball in Oakland matters. We want a team in Oakland. I don't think that Oakland, as a city, wants to get into the expansion fight, because then you're going to have a public financing that's way more than what they're offering right now and what John Fisher would accept around the Howard Terminal. So it's going to be a far worse situation, and they can look no further than Seattle, who lost the Sonics to Oklahoma City in the NBA, and now we're going to spend twice that to try to get expansion back, and so they can get NBA back in Seattle. So it's better to keep your team than to lose it and try to get another team.
Yeah, let's dive into Oakland real quick. I know you've been very generous with your time. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but you look at Oakland, they have $400 million raised for infrastructure around the park. They've agreed with the county to help pay the on-site infrastructure, the infrastructure where the park would actually sit. That could be upwards $800+ million. That's far more than Vegas is offering. So when you look at this deal in Oakland as it currently stands, and yes, Rob Manfred, there is a deal in place if the A's wanted to sign it. What do you think of Oakland's offer?
I think that given where Oakland has been over the years, and the fact that Lou Wolf wanted to move the team and he tried Fremont or San Jose, and there's just been a stadium issue, I don't think Oakland wants to be a city that wants to lose all of its professional sports. And so I believe that they have stretched and that there is a deal there to be made. And I can't figure out why Rob is not saying to John Fisher, listen, we need this deal. You can't move. And I'm not saying he hasn't said that. So here's my last point. Everything you're hearing publicly, that's not necessarily what's going on behind closed doors. When Bud Selig stood up and said, the Marlins have permission to seek relocation, the Marlins can meet with other cities, Bud Selig told me straight up, no chance. You're not moving. You better get a deal done in Miami, but here's how we can help you. It is not impossible that that is what Major League Baseball is doing right now, that they are saying that the A's can move, even that the A's will move, but behind closed doors, they're saying, I don't know that you've got 23 votes, Mr. Fisher. You better get that deal done in Oakland. Is John waiting to the last minute? Yeah. Is it the last minute right now? No. That's the point. They have until January of 24 to get a deal in place somewhere. It's only June. So there's plenty of ups and downs left, plenty of steps left to take. And I will stay on my island that the A's are not leaving Oakland until I see the moving trucks and the logo that the team has moved to Las Vegas. Until then, you and I, we can be like the last two people, Tom Hanks and Wilson. I'll be Tom Hanks. You can be Wilson.
Tom Hanks, by the way, grew up an A's fan. Sold hot dogs at the Coliseum. Big A's fan growing up from the area. So great analogy right there, David P. Samson.
I don't know if you can see behind me. That's not the real Wilson. But that, right above my right shoulder, is the actual, left shoulder. I'm pointing at it right now. That's the actual, I'm actually going to bring it to you. This is the actual pocket watch from Castaway.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's Helen Hunt. I can't tell you how much I love that movie. And very meaningful to me. And Tom Hanks, it's a great example of someone, there's so many A's fans, and you've had great, great teams. Obviously, you know, the World Series that you had won, many of them under Finley, and then the Quake World Series. What year was that?
1989. Swept the Giants after the big earthquake.
So it's been a minute, but it's been a lot more minutes for a lot of other teams. So it's not as though Oakland has not been successful on the field, but now we just need them to be successful off the field. And reverse boycotts, all of that aside, I would like to see people buying season tickets, and I would like to see people saying, regardless of our view of John Fisher, we want the experience of baseball for our family, for our children and grandchildren, and for our work, for our employees, our employers. We want to make memories, so we'll ignore the fact that we don't like the owner and the president. I always said to people, Casey, you don't like me, so you don't go to games? What do I have to do with it? Your 8-year-old child could care less about me, whether we traded Cabrera or not. They're with their dad eating a hot dog at a Major League Baseball game, and I want that for the people of Oakland.
Yeah, I want that for my kids. I want that for my kids' kids. I want that to continue here. Maybe it will. I think it's far more lucrative for them to figure out Oakland, and then they've already laid the groundwork for expansion in Las Vegas. Thank you for keeping it real. Thank you for inviting me onto your island, and I'm happy you joined me on mine, and you know, maybe we can keep visiting each other on our own islands here.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day.